right, so what we have here is one of the original builds of Raid Shadow Legends. This was provided to us by the content creator management, Plarium, whoever you want. They thought it would be fun. Well, let's just read what they said. Okay. They say let's leave the negativity aside again. Hilarious. There you go. So this is build 1.13. They say enjoy your time playing around with the early version. It brings tears to my eyes thinking about how very far we've come. And I'm super happy to be part of the journey. So that's from Banana Jam. So this is what we got. Oh, a referral program. This was a referral program, damn. Alright, so this is what we got. We've got this is the game, basically. I would say this is the game maybe a couple months after I started playing. This is what stage the game was in, so not quite 4 years ago. I don't know exactly when 1.13 was, but let's look at the champs. Bannerlords has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They got 9 Legos. That's probably the most out of all of them. We do have 2 Void Legos. God, look how few epics there are, man. There's like 4 rows of epics now. Like, nothing's changed for uncommons and commons. Why do Bannerlords have 4 commons, by the way? Very little rares, man. There's like almost 4 rows of rares now, too. Yeah, bro. It's so weird to see it. Stagnite at this point was one of the best champs in the game, for sure. Still is very solid. Baron, this is before the Baron rework, I believe, when Skypiercer was still a, this was a special ability, I think. A hidden ability? Wasn't that the hidden ability, or nah? Does he not have it anymore? I wonder if it's the same champs, but the current builds. Check Mignana. Oh, we could check Mignana, yeah. Oh, shit, they didn't give her to me. Heals all allies by 40% of their max HP. That's the old Mignana. Right? Places block debuffs. Yeah, this is the old one. Septimus was one of the most sought after champs with the enemy max HP. He was making runs super quick. People were running Septimus on everything, man. Dragon 20, Spider 20. He was very sought after back then, for sure. He's a nobody these days. He certainly is due for a buff, in my opinion. Certainly worth a buff. Warcaster was a huge one to get because he has the block damage, and you could build a team with like him and like a man-eater or a. I built a team with him, and my first unkillable team was him and Sir Nick. The team was very wonky. I had to actually I had to manual it to make sure it worked. It was very frustrating having them, and it was a 4-key Ultra Nightmare, so I had to manual Clan Boss 4 times a day for months, man. That was rough. All right, high elves. We've got 4, 9 again, so they've got 9. 9 epics only. RG still is solid, and he was definitely king of the crop back then. Takedown with that enemy max HP. He was being used everywhere. Excellent champ. Tyrell, at this point, Tyrell was one of the elite champions. Elite champions. Decreased defense, AoE. He was like one of 2 champs that did it. Man, and it took me forever to get this guy. Forever. Forever, man. Took me forever. I mean, no one really other of note. Obviously, Arbiter. Lissandra was one of the first champs I got. I wouldn't necessarily say she's still viable, but her kit's still super strong. I mean, you can still use her. Lots of turn meter. But she's certainly not king of the crop anymore. High Elves has just been a rough faction. I feel like they've been very, they don't even have an a common here. Interesting. Back then, Arbor and Sandra were the most, yeah, exactly. Yeah, speed into speed, Tyrell for drop defense, and then like Trunda, or people were even using, like Ethos or something, because he has the no crit A3. It was tough to build crit back then, man. You didn't have the options. All right, we got Sacred Order, 7 champs, Sacred Order, a ton more epics. Wow, look at how many epics they had. Of note, who was this? Hero 4540. What is this? That's weird. Phoenix certainly, I would say, is viable currently, right? I would say he's still viable. Sacred Order is their epics kind of haven't been that great. Even still. But I feel like Venus Cupidus are still very, very relevant. You can see them in Live Arena Stoneskin builds where he counterattacks constantly. But in Hydra, bro, these two in Hydra are amazing. Amazing. They bring everything you want for Hydra. Obviously, there was no Hydra back then. I think Martyr, obviously, as well. One of the, at the time, one of 3 champs, and really still is the case with the AoE counterattack. She was one of the first champs I got on the on my main account. I used her everywhere. People were like going crazy. I remember in my chat. I remember in my my chat window here. Everyone went like crazy after the, not everyone, but I got like 5 or 6 messages after they saw I pulled a martyr, and I knew like zero about martyr. Like I knew zero about the game at the time. I'm like, what is this martyr? Like everybody was so fired up. Not everybody, but maybe 10 people in chat. Looking at all the factions, how few there are. So this is like, so the first 3, right? The first 3 fairly built out. I feel like the rest of the factions were pretty, like they kind of built up the first 3 factions of both, like kind of the good guys and the bad guys. I kind of call them whatever. But then it's like the rest of the factions that got kind of left out during the early days. Um, Yeah, back in the day, Turvold was highly sought after. He was definitely one of the hardest hitting champs. He's probably still one of the hardest hitting champs. People were using him everywhere. Clan Boss for sure, Demon Lord. Um, Pretty much anywhere. If you had Turvold, like you were kind of the man. Turvold was very highly sought after back then. Valkyrie, obviously still one of the best champs in the game, still highly usable. Back then, bro, I would arguably said she was the best, maybe probably Duchess, but probably the second best non-void champ in the game back then. She did everything. Still does a ton. People used her all the time in live arena, man, and I always lost. She was very destructive. She's still pretty good. Or not in live arena, but in arena. Alright, Oregon Tribes, only 6 Legos. Man, like, there was no one you really wanted to get out of this. Probably the best champ here is either Ignatius, just for the unresistible HP burn. That was pretty strong back then. I'm pretty sure he was the only one doing this back then too. So he was not a bad one to get if you got him back then. Big Un was pretty strong back then too. I didn't get him for a long time. It took me probably 2-3 years before I actually got him, so I never really used him when he was big. I would say the most highly sought after champ, and probably arguably still, for at least for early mid game accounts, was Maneater, man. This guy just opened up so much for you. And if you got two Maneaters, like, call it a day. You were two key in Ultra Nightmare and you didn't even, or you were two key in Ultra Nightmare, Demon Lord, and you were set. Oh, Shamrock was the first St. Patty's Day, I believe, sauce, yeah. Was there a Krisk? Yeah, we'll get. Is that here? Yeah, Krisk was early. Krisk was early for sure. Only 5. Only 5 Lizardmen. Look at how crazy that is. Man, this is. They really had no champs. Quargon was out back then. Wow. He was pretty solid back then. Jareg for sure. Highly, highly sought after. Early. Still a great champ if you get him early mid game. A1 decreased attack was huge for Demon Lord comps, and then obviously the ally protect and increased defense AOE, solid passive too. He was very highly sought after for clan boss. Krisk, I mean Krisk is still one of the best guys in the game. Krisk is S plus for Hydra. You want this guy in Hydra. Imagine this guy early. Like I actually got him maybe 4 or 5 months into the game. This guy was ridiculous. Yeah, this guy's still one of the best guys in the game. Imagine getting him back. Like I got him and I was able to do everything. It unlocked the entire game for me. And Dracomorph, bro, Dracomorph. First there was, well, I should bring it up, but the whole the whole Draco Gate situation was funny, but he was actually horrible early on, and then they buffed him and made him one of the best clan boss champs in the game. Man, they gave him everything he wanted for Demon Lord. The decreased defense weaken, and that's an AOE, so like you could use that other places. And then 4-hitter for poisons, and a super hard hitting A1, man. And this A1 used to be super broken. Surplus damage the surplus damage used to like, you could kill a minion on ice golem and it would almost one-shot the boss. It was ridiculous. Is that the unreleased void? Yeah, I don't know. I tried to click into that before. Oh, what is that? Nazamok. Is that even a champ? A1 poison? This looks like someone's kit. Whenever an ally under a reflect damage buff is attacked, places a leech buff on the attacker for 1 turn. I don't know this guy. It doesn't say what he does. These debuffs aren't what they say. I don't know what that is. That's alright. Passive maybe? Yeah, so this was oh look, Jareg's up here too. Take the black scale. It looks like I don't know. So he had an AoE, 30% chance of placing decreased speed for 2 turns. Damn. This champ's resistance is increased by 5 for each poison debuff on the enemy team. So it's not even a full ability, bro. Is he just automatically places poisons? What is this? That's a passive. Increases duration of all poison debuffs and HP burn debuffs on all enemies by 1 turn, then instantly activates any poison. It sounds like Theodore. Places we can debuff for 2 turns on enemies not under poison and HP burn. Yeah, work in progress. Never made it past the cutting board. Look at how small Skinwalkers was. Wow. Oh my gosh, man. Gnarlhorn's still there. Graybeard. If you wanted to get through Faction Wars back in the day, you needed to have 2 Steel Skulls built. Pretty much. This guy did so much work for Faction Wars, man. He got me. I had built 2 of these to get through Faction Wars. I remember that. The only guy that I really felt like I got early on was actually these 3. I got a Kronar pretty early, and these 2 who I never used. I actually have 5 war chiefs, and I built 4 of them. Fully built them for a meme defense. I don't know. It was probably a waste of resources, but Brachus, people used them early on for arena, but he's a bit underwhelming. Super underwhelming now. Orcs, decent amount of epics in the orcs. Certainly Seer was equally as good back then as she is now. Vrask, I would say, is still viable for early mid-game accounts, getting through Faction Wars. Very good champion. Was that Sun? What's her name? Still a great champ. Has the ally protect and block damage. People use her in clan boss a bunch. Warlord still as good as he was back then for sure. I actually had Angar fairly early too, and he's still trash. Yeah, so I think some of these champs are probably the it looks like some of them are the current builds and some of them are the old builds. All right, Demon Spawn. Yeah, see, like early on, like I said, the first couple of the like these 3 and these 3 had like way more Legos than the rest of them. Kymar was insanely highly sought after. Like any of the big dogs in Arena were running Kymar, and then obviously you had all the reset comps with him. Mortu Macabre was actually, I feel like he was used a lot for sure. I didn't get him for a long time, so he's just a champ I never actually used ever. I have one built though. Candrafon, after he got buffed, became one of the best nukers in the game. Tons of people were using him. Before the buff, he was horrendous. He was absolutely horrendous. But he's still a viable champ, I'd say. And Withe, a lot of, like, these were highly sought out. Like, Voids were very hard to get back in the day. He was pretty highly sought after, too. I don't know if he could be buffed or not. Dutchy's still maybe the best non-void Lego in the game, at least the best non-void support Lego in the game. Man, if you got Dutchy back in the day, you were set. Allure, highly sought after back in the day, helped you out with, I mean, she was, I feel like the reason why when they went to, Dungeon 25, Dungeon Stage 25 on all the different dungeons, and they basically didn't allow you to do turn meter manipulation anymore, I think it was because of her. Because of this A1, bro. The A1 was used everywhere. Turn meter was capably able to be dropped. Yeah, all right. Here's the OG Rhodos. This may or may not. I would imagine this is before like the major nerf, but let's see. Text one enemy, 75% chance of placing decreased defense for 2 turns. Also has a 25% chance of grading an extra turn. Will ignore 60% of the defense, will ignore unkillable block damage. Enemies killed by the skill cannot... Yeah, enemies killed by the skill cannot be revived as this champ has gained maximum amount of HP. Oh, this is the The current one. I think that's the current one. Yeah, but look how filled out. Look how filled out the undeads were, man. There were so many good undead champs. Mausoleum Mage was highly sought after. Had removed all debuffs. Um, Crit rate. He had 3 buffs, so like a lot of people would use him for seer teams to get those extra buffs up. Highly sought after champ back then for sure. Gorgorab early game. If you had a Gorgorab, you were in great shape, man. You had an AoE revive. There were few champs that revived back then. Gorgorab was, I would say, highly sought after. Bad L. Early on, Bad L was one of the most sick champs for sure. Just because he brought so much survivability, and then poisons were kind of broken back then. Like people were even using him on Demon Lord. He was a strong champ too. Mashalad, I think Mashalad got buffed and then he became really good. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he wasn't super strong early on. I used Harvest Jack to complete Faction Wars, man. He was huge. You had to get the problem with him is, and I feel like they gotta buff this guy. You have to have that true fear to be able to land a block buffs, man. Or the fear. If you don't, like, if you remove that conditional, like, this guy becomes automatically viable for Hydra. They should move that condition, honestly. You get AoE decrease speed, AoE block buffs, and AoE decreased attack, and you could throw some poisons out there too, man. This guy would become a S tier for freaking Hydra immediately. All they got to do is remove that conditional. Crypt King people liked for spider teams later in Spider 25, where you could freeze and burn them, kind of. But obviously the most sought after champs were Rotos and Siphi. It took me a long time to get Rotos, and I still only have 1 Rotos after 4 years. Dark Elves, actually, Vizier was one of the most sought after champs for sure early on. He was used in a lot of Demon Lord teams to do the debuff extension on his A1. So you could just get a set of buffs on the clan boss that you wanted, and then you just use him to make sure they always stayed on there. A lot of people like to have him. I didn't get him for a long time, so I never made a comp like that. Foley was probably my first nuker. Still viable. He's really good, man. He has a block revive, AoE, a 2-hitter on the one that you target, which can kill a Rotos, and then the quad hit and a quad hit makes him viable for Fire Knight. At least in Cursed City Fire Knight. But I would say Madame back in the day, bro. But back in the day, Madame Cerise. This ability was, yeah, Arby, Lysandra, Madan, Trunda. That was the meta, man. That was the meta. But removes all the buffs from enemies, places decreased attack, decreased defense, man. This was... I remember when I first started playing this game, what I did was to kind of... Because I'm a boomer, bro. I didn't think to look at YouTube to, like, find anything. Like, to find builds or guides or anything. I didn't think about it early on. So what I did was went to top players, and I would look at what the teams were that people were using, and you would see team after team that had an epic, and I'm like, yo, you can get, there's like an epic that's good, that's on like the leaderboards of arena, like, bro, I gotta get this epic, right? I have a chance of getting an epic. You know, you find out it's a void, it's hard to get, but that made me very excited back in the day, man. That you see that you could get a Madame for it. All right, so Whirlim was a part of the battle pass, and it was I actually got him fairly. I got him because of the battle pass. Whatever, we got a Lego, right? I figured it was a good one to get. He was terrible. He wasn't terrible, I guess, but like he helped me get through a lot of the early game, like campaign and stuff. But then like you didn't use him, right? Um, Hegemon back then was insanely highly sought after. Everything was a speed team. If you had a Hegemon, you didn't really have to worry about having that speed team, right? People really wanted Hegemon. I was never a fan of him because I feel like after that he kind of stinks. Miscreated Monster was a monster, helped you with. He basically was spider teams back then. He would be, because you would do so much damage and all the shields he would produce were enormous. I remember videos of like full bar shields coming up because of hitting all the spiderlings, right? Getting all that damage. Um I would guess Doom Priest is probably the other one that everybody wanted. Skull Crown too. Skull Crown was highly sought after for sure. A lot of people were running. What the heck were those? What were those? Not Mixer, Blender, Blender comps in Arena. Um, Long Beard or something, and then you would run like Sinesh and Skull Crown. A lot of people did that. I see. Was late. Yeah, I was late, Harry. I had to get the dog at the groomer, and he was there for like 4 hours, so I ended up being a little late. Yeah, pre-stone skin, pre-reaction. Yeah, you couldn't make it go second. Yep. Yeah, it was all about speed back then, and that's why Hegemon was solid. Uh, yeah, other than that, no one really super special. Doom Priest is still great. Doom Priest is still on a lot of Doom or Demon Lord teams. She's still on my Demon Lord team for free to play. And then dwarves had nobody, man. Dwarves was the most underwhelming in terms of the amount of champs. But the champs, like, you were happy getting any of these Legos. If you got any of these Legos, you were thrilled. Tormund was part of an early fusion. Trunda was for a long time the best nuker in the game. Mountain King, I believe, wasn't super great early on, but then get buffed. Oh, there's the pup with his haircut. I don't know if I fed the dog yet. We may have to do that. And then Molly was one of the fewer revivers back in the game, back in the day. Granted, it was a single, and still is a single target revive, but just having a revive back in the day was so big. Even just getting through like faction wars and stuff. Gala helped me get through faction wars. I used Rockbreaker to get through faction wars with the provokes. I think I used rear guard as well. I think I used 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think Grizzle Jarl was my 5th. I think that's how I got through faction wars. When it was like, basically, this was the champs. Pre-Geo, yeah, pre-Geo. Geo made it a lot easier, for sure. So, this is pretty cool, man. It's fun to look at it.